this is Dr. Maurice Duffy, and I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted to have one of the leading leaders within the NHS with me today, and that is Jim Mackey. Hey, Jim, how are you doing?
I'm good. Hi, Maurice. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. Where do we find you today?
So I'm in North Tyneside Hospital today. I'm still being in largely throughout the kind of lockdown process, and so yeah, I'm sat at my desk, North Tyneside, looking out onto an empty car park.
Into an empty car park, and obviously I have to ask, what's happening in the hospital at the moment? Where are you in the crisis curve? Is it calm or is it panic?
So we thought when it all kicked off, our predictions was that we're going to peak at around Easter weekend in terms of patients coming in with the COVID infection. And that proved to be just about right. We were very well prepared, so our clinical teams managed it very well. And since then, we've seen a gradual easing out and decline of patients coming in and bed occupancy, etc. So at the moment, we're running on about 60% bed occupancy. And we've got roughly 40 patients in who are COVID positive, and we have about 900 beds. So what we're really focused on now is restoring public confidence that it's safe to come in for other things, and try and use the summer months to just get ahead of that, in case we have another comeback of it in the winter.
And have you seen a drop off in other cases coming in?
Yeah, so that's our main worry, to be honest. I think the NHS nationally and certainly here and regionally managed that anticipated a peak in demand at the beginning very, very well. When we look back now, we had to curtail a lot of other activities as a result of just getting ready for that and giving ourselves the best chance. So we're seeing a huge drop-off in presentations of people who've had strokes or heart attacks or cancer diagnosis, symptoms, etc. So we're really now just trying to reach out to people and encourage them to access services and get them sorted out.
And would that be your message to people, is that, to come in, like to trust the system, that you're open for business?
Absolutely. The NHS is very safe. And I think when you look back, I did a bunch of presentations last week. Since lockdown, as of Friday, we'd had about 14,000 admissions in that period. And you would think from the media that like maybe 8 or 9 or 10,000 of those would be COVID admissions. We'd had about just over 500 COVID positive admissions in that period out of that 12, 13, 14,000 admissions, depending on which day you look at. So we're very safe. We've done, the clinical team's done a fantastic job in terms of segmentation and all the distancing and the usual hygiene you would expect, because we do this for other things as well, in winter with norovirus and flu and those sorts of issues. So they're very safe environments, and we really need people to be coming in and getting back to business. Albeit it's different because we can't have waiting rooms, which is a good thing anyway. We can't have a crowded ED, which none of us were very comfortable with anyway. So we're having to manage flow in as much as we can and how people move around buildings, but very, very safe and secure places. And this week we're going to do a bit more public-facing comms with live case studies where people have come in and had their knee operation, a diagnostic procedure, etc. Show that that's absolutely fine.
And one of the big questions that I hear a lot, and I'm sure you won't be surprised, is about staff morale and staff motivation. And the applause every Thursday for kind of the NHS staff. What's your sense of where people are actually at?
So I think we've been through lots of waves with this thing, and when I look back now, first of all, it's quite hard to remember how long we've been in lockdown. Everybody's clock's sort of distorted. But the thing that really stands out is that that connection between the NHS and the population of the UK, the really, really strong bond, and that appreciation and love at the beginning was really powerful, because people were frightened. NHS staff, I think of colleagues who I could see fear on their faces when they were getting ready for their first clinical contact with the condition, etc. So we want to try and build on that. Staff have been anxious throughout for various reasons. We've never run out of PPE, but they have in other places. Touch wood, we haven't lost a member of staff yet, and hope we don't ever. but that's quite unusual. And where people have lost a colleague, that's had a big impact. And everybody knows somebody who's died of this. So people have got bad experiences of that, which is going to stay with them for a long time. We do early doors. We created a version of our staff experience work called Corona Voice, where we just wanted to allow staff to tell us how they felt and what they were worried about, and that's been really effective to help us with our next steps and what we need to do. So generally, people morale's been great, actually, fantastic team spirit across health, social care, councils, transport, you name it. But people are anxious, and in this last 2 weeks, especially, the realization that this isn't something that somebody's going to turn up one day and say, or quickly and say, here's a cure or here's a vaccine. You can forget.
Unless you're Trump, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's something we've got to learn to live with, and make sure it doesn't ruin our lives.
So what's been, obviously you've seen isolation, you've probably experienced some of it personally. So what's been, what have you found difficult, and what have you kind of said, hey, this is good for the future out of this?
Yeah. So in terms of isolation and lockdown, I've actually really quite enjoyed it. So if I'm honest, so not having to do all the running around that we do, on weekends and stuff, and a lot more time with my wife, and exercised more. I like to exercise a lot anyway, but managed to get a really good routine for all of that. I've not enjoyed not being able to see the kids and my mother and those sorts of things. So if we could just modify it a little bit so we could do that, I'd be happy as Larry, to be honest. But we've all had to relearn how we spend our time, haven't we, and how we interact, how we work. We're doing an awful lot more digitally, which is great. But there are still times where you just need to be in a room from a leadership point of view and have human interactions with people. And the NHS is a people thing. It's about human beings. So we're now just trying to get our heads around how digital lives with physically distanced human meetings, etc., and ways of working. So I think I think we've learned a lot from that point of view. We've really transformed how we do things like outpatients, and we've been working on trying to stop patients having to travel for outpatients, and that's just taken off in a huge way, which is really fantastic. So I want to hang on to that. And some of our service models have changed. We moved all of our services around over 2 days at the beginning, just before lockdown, to get ready. And a lot of them won't change again because they've actually been more successful from our perspective than they were before. So I think with all these things, we've just got to hang on to the bits that have worked, learn from them. There's still a lot of things we're trying out. And
I'm just getting a cup of tea here. So don't worry. It's got a Liverpool mug on it as well. So
well, you might be awarded the title in the next couple of weeks.
I should do. But what would interest me, and I'm sure would interest other people listening, is what's happening in casualty then as well. Because we hear of a lot of people being afraid to go in or being anxious about it, or to an extent staying at home with the conditions which is not going to be particularly helpful to their long-term health.
Yeah, so the messaging on this is really complex. For years, we've been worried about being full of patients who really shouldn't be there because their needs could be met elsewhere. They didn't really have much wrong with them, but they felt the need to come to A&E, or they got drunk and caused a problem. And that was already crowding out real clinical issues that our teams wanted to get to. And we've been struggling with that for a long time. After the lockdown, volumes dropped to about half normal volumes. And what we were really only seeing were those in extremis and those who thought they were COVID positive. And in that distance between what we've been seeing and what we used to see, a chunk of those people have just not really needed much, and that's been fine. They've just found another way of something resolving itself. But there's also a large proportion of that who are people who have genuine disease, and we need to find them and encourage them to come in and get treatment for that. So we're having to work through now is how do we encourage that message without then getting full of the people who really shouldn't be there, and still crowding out access for those who really need to worry about. And in a lot of this, a lot of what we've been doing is kind of going back to good old-fashioned mechanisms. You know, in the early days of the NHS, there was an awful lot of good old-fashioned public health about searching out disease into communities, finding people who were worried about access, didn't know they could get access, etc. And I think we're all going back a bit and just thinking about, so how did that work in the 50s when, you know, when people were worried about coming into health buildings and stuff, and then using some of those mechanisms, but attached to new technology and new science and new approaches.
And what advice, Jim, would you give to, you know, and I get asked the question a lot, you know, what advice would you give to people at home, right? So they're fit, they're healthy, but they're anxious, they're stressed, you know, they're obviously concerned about their parents or about their kids. And what's really interesting, they're anxious about getting free from lockdown, right? So which is the most bizarre thing. So we were anxious about going into lockdown, but we've almost become comfortable in lockdown. Because we feel safe, and for some, it's helped relationships, especially with, you know, family, distant family. And for others, it's just built a comfort. So we've built this comfort blanket around us, and now we feel we're being exposed to the world. So what would you say to those individuals?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things on that. First of all, everybody wants certainty in the science and have a really clear set of instructions. And if we're all honest, this is a new coronavirus that people really still don't understand. So there's an element of risk in whatever's done. There isn't certainty. So we have to be sensible and exercise our judgment in trying to stick to the rules as best we can. So that we've still got to, you know, stick to the rules, not just all go out and start crowding each other on the beach and, you know, getting drunk and all those sorts of things can't happen, because we will cause more problems as a result of that. I think routine and structure really helps. Humans like and need routine. So if your normal rhythms are disturbed, create a new one. And and that might mean you still have to get up at a certain time and exercise, and then, you know, do a bit of work, and, you know, all those sorts of things. You'll find that you feel just so much better by doing those sort of normal, natural rhythms, albeit new ones to what you experienced before. Getting fresh air in daylight, there's a reason why people were allowed to do that during lockdown. I think it was a good thing. And we all know we'll feel better if we can get out and just get a bit of fresh air and clear our heads. So take advantage of those things. But we're now in a more ambiguous phase where it feels like we're neither in lockdown nor free. And I know from talking to people that they're very anxious about that. So again, you can't beat sensible judgment, just making good, reasoned, common sense judgments.
I totally endorse that. And that structure is so important, right, in your day. And the routine is so important. And you described it very well. When you're kind of knocked out of rhythm, you know, find a new rhythm. That's really important. But yeah, I was thinking, you know, when you were saying not rush to the pub, I have to admit I will be rushing to the pub the minute open. And one of the kind of funny things I saw was in Ireland, you know, where they have opened up in pretty much the same way as England, about garden centres, etc. All the pubs now have garden centre signs outside.
Excellent.
We're selling flowers. We're selling flowers, and you can have a pint of beer on the side, right? So that's. But you know, as you know, carrying a hugely responsible and you know, stressful job, and you know, and critically important to, you know, the health of the nation. You know, how do you relax? How do you find time for yourself? How do you motivate yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a family man. For relaxation purposes, being with my family is the big thing. So being able to go home and just talk to my wife and FaceTime with the kids or whatever really helps me. I'm an introvert, and at work I have to communicate all the time. So I'm usually tired of communicating when I get home. So I have to work on that a little bit, and I don't always get that right. But also exercise is a really big thing for me, and routine, as we talked about earlier on. So I'm in a rhythm where I get up early because the kids were swimmers. So my body clock's broken forever. So I'm still up at 5. I'll do an hour's work. I'll walk the dog and exercise, and then I'll start, you know, proper work. And when I go in, I'll probably exercise again with my wife tonight. So those things just really help. I had a bit of a rough day yesterday where I was just really irritable, and I felt out of rhythm, and I was arguing with people about some national policies I didn't agree with and all that. So I went home really grumpy and got up this morning with a purpose. Did the usual things. Got up, had my breakfast, walked the dog, did a bit of work, went out and had a nice walk. I walked for half an hour this morning. Didn't push myself, so I didn't run and stuff. Just felt a lot better. So I think all of us need to have insight into the fact that we've all got to work at this. It's not, being perfectly balanced and feeling fantastically healthy all the time isn't just something that happens. We've got to take ownership of that and try and make it happen.
And I often say, we're all entitled to a meltdown every now and then. Just don't get comfortable there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the kind of critical point. So, I know you're a swimmer. So is swimming your sport?
It was, yeah. I mean, I haven't swum for ages now, obviously, with this thing, and I'd sort of got out of the habit before that. But swimming was my thing. At the minute, I'm jogging more. My wife and I have been doing Joe Wicks, which is fantastic. I wouldn't have done that before lockdown. Really enjoying that. And we took the plunge and bought a Peloton bike a couple of weeks ago. So I had a spin bike anyway, but I've just been trying to get my head around using the Peloton. I'll do something different every day now to just give a bit of variety, and I can feel I deteriorate over about 2 days if I don't manage to get some kind of exercise. It's always
I agree. Yeah, that exercise, and I'm very similar to you in the sense. I go to the beach in the morning with the dog. I was out this morning at 6 o'clock. I like the fact the beach is kind of quiet, and you just get those moments. So who would be your hero? Who would be the person you would most admire, and why would they be a hero to you?
I honestly, I really struggle with that one. So the people that are coming to mind sound really twee, but my wife and my dad, actually, for different reasons. And I've got the people I'm interested in history and stuff. Like Churchill and some of his achievements, and from a sporting perspective, there's some great. Newcastle's had some great footballers over the years and that. But yeah, I couldn't. As prep for this, I was thinking he's going to ask us this, and I couldn't really come up with a better answer. So I go with my instinct, my wife and my dad.
Well, that's a very honest answer, because I've asked this question of a lot of people, and they do get the kind of insight beforehand of the types of questions I'm likely to ask, and so they come up with some interesting characters. So what kind of books do you read? Where do you get the kind of mental stimulation from? Is it music? Is it books? Is it?
It's not music. I'm completely musically inept. I don't know the words to a single song. Whenever a song comes out, I'm always interested by people who always know what the name of a song is and what the words are. I know what I like and what I don't like, but I couldn't tell you what they are. And over the last 2 years, I've sort of got really interested in history podcasts, which sounds really dull and boring, but Dan Snow's history podcast and the History Hour.
Oh, he's good. He is good.
Those sorts of things. I listen to them every day. The book that I'm reading at the minute is a book written by a local guy actually who works in the NHS, Dan Jackson, who's written a book called The Northumbrians, which is a fantastic read. I'm mentioned in one bit of it, which is the whole purpose of being interested in the first.
Where am I?
Yeah, exactly. But it's just a really fantastic read about the history of Northumbria. And for me, I struggle to read when I'm not on holiday. So there's always stuff going through my head. But that's a book that I'm able to be able to find a quiet half hour over a weekend and actually just read it.
And I've been doing some interesting work with friends of yours, actually. So, I've been deconstructing swimming.
Uh-huh.
And been doing so with Chris Cook. We've been doing visualization on deconstructing the swimming. So we've got to that point of just diving into the water, that first touch of your fingers. So we've gone through 4 or 5 in the lead up. So our plan is to go right through the whole swimming. So yeah, I'm sure as a swimmer, you might be interested in listening to Chris, not me, but listening to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I don't have the skill set to say what you should do. But that's interesting. So, I thank you for your time, but, what would be your kind of walk away thoughts if you were to, people out there listening to you and, as I said, one of the critical leaders of health, etc. What would be your walk away thoughts for them?
So one of the things that we're working on very hard, and I've had to work on myself here, is the relentless negativity and focus on the downsides of what's happened. We've had tragic deaths, and we all know people who've died, and it's very, very sad, isn't it? But the NHS has managed this incredibly well, in spite of, the international comparisons are really hard to make, but it's managed it very well. And largely, people who've had COVID have survived and have recovered. And it's so, in all of this, there's an awful lot of positives, there's an awful lot of successes, there's an awful lot of learning, etc. So I think we all need, including me, to avoid getting trapped in the negativity and the things that didn't work. None of us are perfect, so we'll have had problems with supply chain and PPE, and we could have done more at the beginning to embrace nursing homes and all those sorts of things. But the NHS is a human entity, it's a human organism, it's built on people, and in that we've seen just people at their best doing the most wonderful things you can imagine. In all of that, we need time to reflect on that and build on it and make things better in the future. So I would just urge people to not get sucked into the black part of all of this, the dark part of it. There's always stuff we can take from this to learn and build on.
And the challenge that we have is that, people spend 80% of their time thinking about what might happen and 20% living the experience. Yeah. And one of the lines that I've been using in order to try and get this message across is that positivity is a virus. It does transmit from human to human.
Yeah.
So if we can kind of get that, the more we are positive and the more we can transmit it, the more we can, lift ourselves, lift our family, and lift the nation.
Absolutely.
So, thank you very much for your time. That was just absolutely fantastic. Huge insights. I really appreciate it. For me, as to looking at one of the people that I admire and learn from regularly. So I thank you for your time. I do want to register my round of applause for the NHS and say thank you. Thank you, Jim, for your time.
Thanks, Maurice. All the best.
Bye. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Was that all right?
Yeah, that was great. Thanks very much. Is that okay?
Not at all. Absolute pleasure.